stories.
Oh, forget
that
it.
guy's got to have stories.
Oh, big time, big time. Letter number 6 comes from Jeff Shrewsbury. He says, "Hello, Dave and Dave. I hope all is well. In your December podcast, I believe there were a few questions about Little Feat and Apolitical Blues and how it came to be on a Van Halen album. Aside from what was already mentioned in the December podcast, I have to think Sammy is the Little Feat fan. On his opening lyrics in Big Fat Money are very similar to the opening lyrics of Little Feat's Teenage Nervous Breakdown. Please compare them and let me know your thoughts. You may have already been aware of this, but I felt compelled to mention it. Thanks, Jeff Shrewsbury." Wow, I tell you, I looked at these two, and I can't believe it. I sent them to you too, Dave. Van Halen's Big Fat Money. Some say money is bad for the soul, bad for the rock, bad for the roll, bad for the heart, bad for the brain, bad for damn near everything. And this is how Little Feats goes. Some contend that rock and roll is bad for the body and bad for the soul, bad for the heart, bad for the mind, bad for the deaf, and bad for the blind. Some make men crazy and they act like fools. Some make men crazy and they start to drool. So there is definitely something going on there, right, Dave?
Yeah, there's totally a, what's the word you like to use, Dave? Homage.
Homage, right, homage.
I think there's a little bit of an homage going on there.
That's true, and boy, I think I smell lawsuit, huh?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I think Sam changes it just enough so that it's an homage.
Well, he certainly called the Red Rocker on the carpet, that's for sure. And
yes.
We are on to letter number 7, and we're moving like lightning here. And this comes from Scott Zulke, and he says, "Dave and Dave, David Lee Roth opening for Kiss? Really? A few questions. What were each of your reactions when you heard this news? I think the Kiss Nation is going to rip him up. They are not going to go for his schmaltzy routine. It's an odd pairing. Can you explain how this probably worked? Did Kiss's management reach out to Dave? Or did Dave's management beg Kiss for the gig? 43 shows? Have you looked at that schedule? The opening leg is 24 shows in 44 days. There's no way his voice is going to hold up. Thank you, gentlemen." Scott Zulke. Well, Scott, I was very surprised, to say the least. I don't think the Kiss Nation will rip him up because I think Dave's smart enough that he's going to tailor his set to make it a more in-your-face Van Halen rockers. I think he's going to trim a lot of the schmaltzy stuff. And, yeah, it's not as odd of a pairing as you think. Kiss and Van Halen are both big 70s rock bands. Apparently, David Lee Roth was shopping for an opening slot, and Kiss picked him up, according to Mark Goodman from Debatable on SiriusXM. And I think Dave can pull it off because it's only 45 minutes a night. What do you think, Dave?
Hopefully he can pull it off.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I don't think Dave will do bad on that. I think it's a good pairing. You know, he's not doing like his Vegas act from like 20, 30 years ago.
No,
so I don't think it's going to be schmaltz. I mean, he's going to do what he did when he opened up for Bad Company.
Yeah.
He's going to rock it out, mostly Van Halen.
Right.
And it'll be just fine.
Right. I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Now, number 8 comes from, you heard it, Dave. Here he comes.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's
Midwest fucking Ron. The last couple of episodes, you floated a Van Halen trio project with Wolf singing. Question. What do you think of Wolf singing on I'll Wait from the last date of the 2015 tour? October 4th, 2015 in the Hollywood Bowl. I don't think I was specific enough last time. I was interested in your opinions of Wolf singing lead vocals on I'll Wait during that show's sound check. So we were looking at the video from the show, but he actually meant the sound check, which I checked out, and Wolf sings lead on the sound check. Okay, so Midwest fucking Ron. All right, Ron. So for once we get a criticism-free thing there. So we just got a regular question, which I'm always pleased about. So I listened to the All Wait sound check, October 4th, 2015 Hollywood Bowl, perhaps the last Van Halen show, right, Dave? Never know. Well, I think that Wolf can sing, but I'm sure he would sound okay on his own stuff, but he can't really pull off David Lee Roth's songs. You know, I think we need to hear his solo album to fully judge. I think he definitely has a voice. I don't know. You know, Roth has a certain swagger and tone and everything to his song. It's hard to replicate. What do you think?
I think he was okay. He was in key.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that certain something
he
didn't have.
Yeah,
it was just okay. And then again, you know, he wasn't singing lead to sing lead.
No,
he was just filling in the vocal while they were rehearsing.
Exactly.
He wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything to write home about either.
Right, exactly. Letter number 9 comes from Charles Hottleman from Phoenix, Arizona. Ooh, he says, "Hi, Dave. and quiet Dave. Your
so
podcast
funny.
kicks ass. When I first heard of a monthly 3-hour podcast about Van Halen, I thought, who is crazy enough to listen to that? 2 years later, I don't miss an episode. My first question is, a lot of older Van Halen fans crap on 1984 because of the keyboards. I think it's one of their best. Top 3. What do you think? Question number 2. If Dave's EP, Crazy from the Heat, bombed, would he have left Van Halen? Thanks, Charles Hodeman from Phoenix, Arizona. Well, Charles, those are interesting questions. I love 1984. The keyboards, that's a whole bad rap. There's keys on 3 tracks out of the 9. The rest of them are really hardcore rockers. It's hard for me to rank Van Halen albums. I don't think it would be in my top 3 because I think it would be more like Fair Warning, Van Halen 1, and Van Halen 2. But I certainly love 1984. I love the keys on it. I think it's all great. I think I'll Wait and Jump are fantastic tracks, and even the intro 1984 I enjoy, so I have no problem whatsoever about 1984. I don't want to hear any fucking complaints. There were keyboards on Diver Down, there was keyboards on Fair Warning, for Christ's sake, and there was also keyboards on And the Cradle Will Rock, so I don't want to hear this shit in terms of complaints about keyboards. That's played up in the press. Number 2, yes, that's a good question about David Lee Roth. My answer is probably not right away, but I think it would have come to a head because Eddie was really writing different material. Let's be honest. I don't think Dave would have really worked well with the new direction of material Eddie was writing, so I'm sure things would have come to blows at some point. I think the EP certainly sped along that process. What do you think, Dave?
I think you're right. I think it sped along the process because, A, you're right, Eddie was changing his songwriting and Dave wasn't a fan. B, Alex's drinking was getting out of control, and in Van Halen, if you're drinking, it's getting out of control.
Yeah, of course.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
And Dave was not a fan of the direction Alex was going. C, Dave was working on his movie deal at the time.
Right.
So I think he would have left to do the movie anyway if the band still wasn't interested in doing that. I think the fact that his solo EP did so well emboldened him to move forward on the movie certainly a lot faster and think he could do almost anything he wanted and go solo. But I think you're right. I think he would have went in that direction anyway for all the factors we talked about.
Okay.
And what was the other part of the question? I already forgot.
1984.
1984. Thank you.
Yeah.
And regarding 1984, that's just a great album, period. And it has keyboards, and so what? Like, complainers like that are from the Eddie Trunk school of complaining.
Yes.
It's got keyboards and the band went downhill after that and yada, yada, yada. That is a great album. Easily, for me, one of Van Halen's best. I could put it in my top 3 easily. At the worst, it's top 4, depending on the day of the week. But I don't think the album should get any slag on it just because it's got keyboards. I mean, my goodness, it sold over 10 million copies. What do you want?
Exactly. Letter number 10 comes from Dave Moses, the 4th Dave, and he says, I was 14 and just missed the 1984 tour, and I was pissed, but my folks wouldn't let me go. I figured I'd go the next tour. Then my friend tells me they broke up, and I said, no, they didn't. He threw a hit parader at me or a guitar magazine, and I read in disbelief as I leaned against the wall in his room and slowly slid down to the ground. Worst day I ever had. Where were you boys when Van Halen broke up? Do you recall? Dave Moses. Okay, Dave, well, this is interesting because you got to remember, it is the mid-'80s and there's no internet, okay? There's no big TV media, and obviously there's television, of course, but there wasn't the media that we have now, which is just like swirling media, like with the phones, anything happens. Like, for example, Ozzy has Parkinson's, and all of a sudden with an instantaneous click, the whole world knows that Ozzy has Parkinson's. And of course, so it's sad to hear about Ozzy having Parkinson's, but it's not like that. News would take time to reverberate. For example, you get a little news from a DJ in between songs. He plays a Van Halen song and then he'll say a little something about Van Halen, or you'd read it in a magazine. So for me, I discovered it while reading Rolling Stone magazine, and they had an interview with Eddie, but it wasn't like a big story. It was more like one of those random note thingies. He kind of said that it was, I think it was a picture of him and Valerie, and he said, we're not going to be in a holding pattern to Dave's whims, and the band is over as you know it. Dave left to be a movie star. He even had the balls to ask if I would do a score for him. And he said 12 years of putting up with his BS. And it was kind of like a very strange way to find out that Van Halen was over. And the reason for that whole thing is because Van Halen was completely without management at the time. So Noel, our friend Noel, who wrote Running with the Devil and was Van Halen's former manager from 78 to 1985, had been let go while the band was still together. And at that point, Van Halen had no manager, so there was nobody handling stuff like this. So it just kind of like fell out the way it fell out. What about you, Dave?
I think I also learned about it from the Rolling Stone article.
Okay.
I don't really remember where I was or anything like that. I'll tell you, though, I do remember where I was when I found out Sammy left the band.
Okay.
About a decade later.
Yeah.
Because I was on vacation in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I remember I read it in USA Today.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, you know what? I go away for a week and the band breaks up. I can't go on vacation anymore.
That's funny. I remember I was at work and I heard it on the radio. I literally said, now I'm in an office and I was listening on earphones. I was working quietly. I literally shouted out, "You have got to be fucking kidding me." And I was so pissed off.
I could totally see you doing that too.
And everybody was like, "What the?" Wait, like you have to realize, you know how it is, Dave. You work in a quiet office. Anybody who says anything above regular voice level, like the whole world stops. So it was literally like, you know, when you're in a restaurant and everybody's sort of eating and there's waiters walking around, and all of a sudden you hear a big crash and everybody stops and looks into the kitchen and there's like some poor waiter who just dropped about 25 wine glasses onto the floor. It was like something like that. It was towards the end of the day and I was just like, it was sort of fed up, and I was like, you have got to be fucking kidding me. I was so pissed off, because I was like, here, we're going to go through this shit again? So I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it when that happened. So yeah, that was more momentous. The other one I was just reading in Rolling Stone in my room, and I was kind of like, why would he do that? Doesn't make any sense, and I was just trying to picture it, like, what are they gonna do? And then I think in the article it was talking about, this is the part of the article that really sucked. He was like, oh, he's writing songs for Patti Smythe, and looks like he's gonna work with her, and then he's thinking about working with Pete Townsend. I was like, what? I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, none of it made any sense to me. I don't know. There's some digging to be done on that situation. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, on to the next letter. Letter number 11 comes from Tom Jones, and he says, I was listening to another podcast today, and the host said he thought Could This Be Magic was terrible and he hated it. That led me to thinking, which is the best Van Halen album by average quality of song? I decided to rate the songs on each of the first 6 albums, the only ones eligible, and the album with the highest average song rating would then be declared the best, in my opinion. However, every song on each of the first 6 albums got 5 stars. Do you guys feel the same way? Seriously, there's not a single second of bad music on any of the first 6 albums. I don't care what other podcasters say. So here what I did. Van Halen 1 is 35 minutes and 34 seconds. Van Halen 2 is 31 minutes and 36 seconds. Women and Children Verse, 33 minutes and 35 seconds. Fair Warning, 31 minutes and 11 seconds. Diver Down, 31 minutes and 4 seconds. 1984, 33 minutes and 22 seconds. The first album is the longest, so who wins? Agree? Tom Jones. P.S. For the same reason, Physical Graffiti is the best Led Zeppelin album, the longest. No, I don't really view it that way. No, I think Could This Be Magic is great. Dave has to remember the title of that song. For some reason, he keeps forgetting it. But
yeah, I don't know what that mental block is.
That's a mental block. The truth is, I love all the Van Halen albums for various reasons, even number 3. And I have certain criticisms of all of them, of course, the exception of Van Halen 1, which is very flawless. But the faults are all part of it. I listen to all of them all the time. The lengths don't determine the quality, right, Dave?